May 2024. A clear morning over Sydney, Australia. The sky looked calm, visibility was excellent, and nothing suggested that the next few minutes would become one of the most intense moments of a pilot's life. A Cessna 210 was cruising normally, carrying its occupants on what should have been an uneventful flight. The aircraft was performing exactly as expected. The engine sounded healthy, and the journey was progressing without any sign of trouble. Thousands of feet below, people continued with their daily routines, completely unaware that a small aircraft overhead was about to face a crisis that would demand absolute precision and complete self-control. General aviation pilots understand that flying is built on preparation rather than luck. Every flight begins long before the wheels leave the ground. Weather reports are checked, fuel calculations are confirmed, aircraft systems are inspected, and emergency procedures are reviewed. Nobody expects an engine to fail, but every pilot knows that mechanical systems, no matter how reliable, can never offer a 100% guarantee. That is why training places such enormous emphasis on emergencies. The goal is not to eliminate risk completely, because that is impossible. The goal is to be ready when something unexpected happens. Without warning, the steady sound from the engine changed. What had been a smooth rhythm suddenly became rough and inconsistent. Within moments, the aircraft lost power. The silence that followed felt far louder than the engine itself. At cruising altitude, an engine failure creates immediate pressure because altitude is steadily disappearing. Every second becomes valuable. Every decision affects the outcome. There is no pause button, no opportunity to restart the situation, and no time to panic. Many people imagine that the first reaction in such a moment is fear. Professional training teaches the opposite. Fear exists, but it must never control the next decision. Aviators learn one lesson from the beginning of their education that remains with them throughout their careers. Before anything else, maintain control of the aircraft. Everything else comes after that. Navigation, communication, troubleshooting, and planning only matter if the airplane continues flying safely. The pilot immediately adjusted the aircraft to its best glide speed. That single action transformed the situation. Although the engine was no longer producing power, the airplane had not become a falling object. A fixed-wing aircraft is designed to glide. As long as sufficient airspeed is maintained, lift continues supporting the wings. Instead of dropping straight toward the ground, the aircraft can travel a considerable distance while descending gradually. Understanding that principle is one thing inside a classroom. Applying it under real pressure is something entirely different. With the glide established, attention shifted toward finding a suitable landing area. Looking outside the cockpit became just as important as monitoring the instruments. Roads, parks, open fields, and airports all became possible options. Each possibility carried different advantages and different dangers. A narrow road might contain traffic. Trees could block an approach. Power lines are often difficult to see until the last moment. Wind direction could change the entire landing plan. Every factor required careful evaluation in only a matter of seconds. At the same time, communication with air traffic control became essential. Controllers exist to assist pilots during abnormal situations by providing information, coordinating surrounding traffic, and preparing emergency services if necessary. Declaring an emergency immediately gives the aircraft priority handling. Those professionals cannot solve the mechanical problem, but they can remove unnecessary complications while the pilot concentrates on flying. Inside the cockpit, there was no room for emotional decisions. Every movement had a purpose. Instruments continued providing valuable information. Airspeed had to remain within a safe range. Altitude determined how many options still remained available. Wind influenced the glide path. Position relative to possible landing locations changed every passing second. Experience allowed each piece of information to become part of one continuously evolving picture. People watching from the ground would probably notice only a small airplane descending through the sky. Few could imagine the amount of concentration required inside the cockpit. Emergency situations often appear dramatic from the outside, but the safest response is usually surprisingly calm. Rapid movements, rushed decisions, and panic create mistakes. Slow, deliberate actions based on training produce better outcomes. The Cessna 210 itself has earned a reputation over many years as a capable and respected aircraft. Used around the world for personal travel, business flights, aerial survey work, and many other missions, it combines performance with versatility. Like every aircraft, however, it remains dependent upon proper maintenance and reliable mechanical operation. Even the best designed machines cannot completely eliminate the possibility of failure. Aviation safety depends upon preparing people for those rare moments when technology does not perform as expected. Back inside the aircraft, the descent continued. Altitude steadily decreased, reducing the number of available choices. Every mile covered through the glide brought the airplane closer to a commitment point where changing plans would no longer be possible. Selecting the correct landing location early enough, but not too early, became one of the pilot's greatest challenges. An incorrect choice could leave the aircraft unable to reach its destination. Waiting too long could remove safer alternatives. The atmosphere inside the cockpit remained focused. Training replaced uncertainty. Procedures replaced panic. Every checklist practiced countless times on the ground suddenly became real. Instead of wondering what to do next, the pilot simply followed the sequence learned through years of preparation. Aviation has always believed that discipline saves lives because emergencies rarely provide enough time to invent completely new solutions. As Sydney stretched across the landscape below, the aircraft continued gliding toward its only opportunity for a safe landing. The engine remained silent, but the airplane was still flying. The outcome would depend entirely on the decisions made during the next few critical minutes, when skill, experience, and calm thinking would face their greatest test. With the chosen landing area now within reach, the pilot knew that every remaining second had to be used wisely. There was no engine power to correct mistakes, no possibility of climbing away for another attempt, and no opportunity to circle back if the approach became unstable. Unlike a normal landing at an airport, this would be a single chance. Once committed, the aircraft had to reach the selected location exactly as planned. The descent continued at a carefully controlled speed. Too much airspeed would waste precious altitude, while flying too slowly could bring the aircraft dangerously close to an aerodynamic stall. Maintaining the correct balance required constant attention. Small movements on the control yoke produced noticeable changes in the glide path, and every adjustment had to be smooth and deliberate. Experience told the pilot that overcorrecting could create more problems than solving them. While scanning outside, the pilot continued looking for hidden obstacles. Power lines, fences, trees, light poles, buildings, and moving vehicles could transform a seemingly suitable landing area into a dangerous trap. From the air, judging distances is never as easy as it appears. Shadows can hide hazards, and changing sunlight may affect visibility. The safest option is not always the closest one, and the closest one is not always reachable. Air traffic controllers continued supporting the emergency by clearing surrounding airspace and monitoring the aircraft's position. Emergency responders were alerted as a precaution. Although everyone hoped they would not be needed, preparation is one of aviation's strongest safety principles. It is always better to have help waiting than to lose valuable time after an accident. Inside the cockpit, checklists were completed as conditions allowed. The pilot verified essential systems, secured the aircraft for landing, and mentally reviewed the final approach. Every action followed a logical sequence designed through decades of aviation experience. These procedures exist because emergencies often overwhelm human thinking. A checklist removes guesswork and allows important tasks to be completed even under extreme stress. As the aircraft descended lower, Details on the ground became clearer. Cars could now be seen moving along nearby roads. Buildings appeared larger with every passing second. Trees that once looked small from altitude now stood as serious obstacles. The landing site seemed close enough to reach, but the approach still had to be managed with absolute precision. At this stage, many people imagine that pilots constantly think about the possibility of crashing. In reality, professional training encourages complete concentration on solving the immediate problem, instead of worrying about possible outcomes. Fear consumes attention, while focus creates solutions. Remaining mentally disciplined is often just as important as possessing technical flying skills. The Cessna continued gliding silently. Without engine noise, the cockpit became unusually quiet except for the sound of airflow around the aircraft. That silence often surprises pilots during engine failures because it reminds them how much depends on their own decisions rather than mechanical power. Every remaining foot of altitude represented stored energy that had to be managed carefully until touchdown. The selected landing area was approaching quickly. The pilot evaluated the wind one final time, adjusted the approach angle, and confirmed that the aircraft would reach the intended point without arriving too high or too low. Unlike powered landings, adding thrust to correct mistakes was no longer an option. Energy management had become the single most important factor. People on the ground began noticing the unusually low-flying airplane. Some stopped to watch, unaware that the aircraft was experiencing a genuine emergency. Others instinctively moved away from the expected landing path. Within moments, what had been an ordinary day became an unforgettable scene witnessed by complete strangers. The pilot resisted every temptation to rush the landing. Quick decisions made without careful judgment often create unnecessary danger. Instead, each control input remained smooth, measured, and intentional. This steady approach reflected countless hours of training, repeated practice, and respect for proven aviation procedures. As the wheels moved closer to the surface, the final moments arrived. The aircraft crossed the edge of the landing area, descended steadily, and aligned perfectly with the chosen path. There was no dramatic last-second maneuver, no reckless attempt to stretch the glide, and no unnecessary risk. Everything depended on accuracy rather than luck. The main landing gear touched the ground first, followed gently by the nose wheel. The aircraft rolled forward while losing speed naturally. Braking was applied carefully to maintain directional control until the airplane came to a complete stop. Only then did the full reality of the situation become clear. An engine failure that could easily have ended in tragedy had instead concluded with a successful emergency landing. Relief filled the cockpit. Everyone on board was safe. Emergency personnel arrived within minutes to confirm that no one had been injured and to secure the aircraft. What had begun as a terrifying mechanical failure had ended as an extraordinary example of calm decision-making, disciplined flying, and professional airmanship. For the passengers, it was a moment they would never forget. For the pilot, it was proof that preparation, knowledge, and composure are often the greatest safety equipment any aviator can carry. Once the aircraft had come to a complete stop, the tension that had filled the cockpit for the past several minutes finally began to disappear. The engine was silent, emergency crews were arriving, and everyone on board realized they had survived an event that could easily have ended very differently. Passengers stepped out safely, grateful simply to be standing on solid ground. For them, it was the end of a frightening experience. For the pilot, it was another reminder that aviation is built on preparation rather than hope. When investigators examine incidents like this, they rarely focus on a single dramatic moment. Instead, they study every detail that led to the successful outcome. They review maintenance records, weather conditions, radio communications, flight data, pilot actions, and the condition of the aircraft after landing. The purpose is not to assign blame immediately, but to understand exactly what happened, so future pilots can learn from the event. Every investigation adds another piece to aviation's constantly growing knowledge of safety. Mechanical failures can occur even in well-maintained aircraft. Engines contain thousands of moving parts, operating under extreme temperatures and pressure. A small defect, contaminated fuel, lubrication problems, component fatigue, or several other unexpected issues can interrupt normal operation. Modern maintenance standards reduce these risks significantly, but they cannot remove them entirely. That is why emergency training remains one of the most important parts of becoming a pilot. Students spend countless hours practicing simulated engine failures before they ever receive a pilot certificate. Flight instructors suddenly reduce engine power and ask the student to choose a landing site, establish the correct glide speed, complete emergency checks, and fly an accurate approach. These exercises are repeated again and again until the correct response becomes automatic. At first, students find the exercise stressful. Later, confidence replaces uncertainty because they understand exactly what needs to be done. Professional pilots often say that you do not rise to the occasion during an emergency, you fall back on your level of training. Those words may sound simple, but this incident demonstrated exactly why they matter. There was no time to search for instructions or debate different possibilities. The pilot reacted through habit, created by years of disciplined practice. Every lesson learned during training contributed to the safe outcome. Events like this also highlight the remarkable design of fixed-wing aircraft. Many people believe that an airplane without engine power immediately falls from the sky. That is one of the biggest misconceptions about aviation. As long as the wings continue moving through the air at the proper speed, they still generate lift. The aircraft gradually loses altitude while covering significant distance. In many situations, that glide capability gives pilots valuable time to evaluate options and prepare for a controlled landing instead of facing an uncontrollable descent. The successful emergency landing near Sydney attracted attention because it demonstrated how effective proper decision-making can be under pressure. Aviation professionals recognized that the outcome was not simply the result of good fortune. It reflected discipline, situational awareness, and respect for established procedures. Every safe landing after an engine failure becomes another example used in flight schools to reinforce the importance of remaining calm. The phrase, "fly the airplane first," has existed for generations, yet its meaning never becomes outdated. It reminds pilots that solving the primary problem always comes before everything else. Communicating with air traffic control is important. Diagnosing the mechanical failure is important. Thinking about paperwork, maintenance, or schedules is important later. But none of those things matter if control of the aircraft is lost. Maintaining stable flight remains the first priority from beginning to end. The lessons from this event extend far beyond aviation. Life often presents unexpected situations that demand quick decisions. Panic usually narrows our thinking and encourages poor choices. Calmness allows the mind to work logically, identify priorities, and solve one problem at a time. Whether inside a cockpit behind the wheel of a car or facing challenges in everyday life, clear thinking almost always produces better results than fear. Thousands of aircraft safely complete flights every single day around the world. Commercial airliners, business jets, helicopters, and small private airplanes operate across different countries in every kind of environment. Because successful flights are routine, they rarely make headlines. Incidents like this receive attention because they remind us of the extraordinary responsibility carried by every pilot who leaves the ground. Behind every takeoff is a commitment to preparation, continuous learning, and constant attention to safety. The May 2024 emergency involving the Cessna 210 stands as a powerful reminder that experience and discipline can make all the difference when unexpected challenges arise. One mechanical problem created an emergency, but professional judgment prevented it from becoming a tragedy. Instead of allowing fear to take control, the pilot trusted years of practice, remained focused until the aircraft stopped moving, and protected every life on board. Stories like this inspire respect for aviation because they reveal what truly happens behind the controls when everything goes wrong. They remind us that heroes are not always people performing impossible feats. Sometimes a hero is simply someone who stays calm, while everyone else expects panic, follows proven procedures instead of emotions, and quietly does exactly what the situation demands. That combination of preparation, confidence, and responsibility turned a potentially disastrous flight into a remarkable story of survival, one that will continue to be remembered whenever people talk about the importance of skill, discipline, and the simple principle that has guided pilots for generations: always keep flying the airplane. That day over Sydney proved that courage is not about never feeling fear. It is about making the right decision when every second matters. A single mechanical failure could have become a tragedy, but discipline, training, and calm thinking changed the outcome completely. Every safe landing has a story behind it, and this one reminds us why aviation remains one of the safest forms of travel in the world. If you enjoyed this real aviation story and want to discover more incredible incidents, investigations, and lessons from the skies, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us in the comments which aviation story you want to see next. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.